You're standing in a quiet room. The kind of quiet that feels too intentional, like silence that's been manufactured, not fallen into. Across from you is someone who smiles without blinking, someone who talks in circles that sound like clarity. Someone who says things that, at first, seem harmless, reasonable even. But somewhere deep inside your gut, a small, barely audible voice whispers. Something is off. You ignore it. You tell yourself you're overthinking. After all, he hasn't raised his voice. He hasn't broken anything. He hasn't touched you in anger. He's only said a few words, just phrases, sentences. But that's the trap, isn't it? Because the most dangerous people in your life will not appear with a warning label. They won't wear their cruelty on their sleeves. They'll come dressed in calm tones, in rehearsed empathy, in words that sound like care but are steeped in control. The battlefield isn't always chaos. Sometimes, it's a soft voice in a dimly lit room saying things that seem small, but are the first domino in a chain of destruction. What if the real red flags aren't shouted, but whispered? What if harm doesn't begin with violence, but with a sentence designed to erode your sense of self? What if the beginning of your unraveling was never the slammed door or the bitter insult, but a quiet moment where you allowed something to slide, because you couldn't quite name what felt wrong? Consider this. A man leans in and says, "You're too sensitive." Or he says, "You're lucky someone like me is even interested in you." Or worse, he makes a joke at your expense, then watches your reaction like a scientist observing a lab rat. He says, "You can't take a joke." And beneath it, the real message, "Don't question me. Shrink." How many women have mistaken manipulation for misunderstanding? How many have been conditioned to analyze themselves instead of the behavior of the one slowly breaking them down? There's a strange paradox here. We are taught to recognize danger by its volume, yelling, hitting, open threats. But real psychological damage rarely announces itself with fanfare. It arrives through casual cruelty wrapped in charm. Through 5 words that make you doubt your memory, your emotions, your worth. So here's the great question. When did we learn to betray our instincts to preserve someone else's comfort? When did silence become the cost of peace? And more importantly, why do we keep giving the benefit of the doubt to people who benefit from our doubt? If a man says certain things to you, phrases that might seem trivial but are deeply rooted in domination, you must walk away. Not later. Not after one more chance. Not after the benefit of the doubt has run its course. Because these words are not just statements. They are strategies. They are diagnostic tools, coded messages revealing a man's internal blueprint, his view of you, of women, of power, of worth. And here's the trap that catches so many: these words don't always come from a monster. Sometimes they come from someone you've laughed with, slept next to, dreamed with. The slow betrayal is the most dangerous because it teaches you to normalize the erosion of your soul, one subtle exchange at a time. The truth is unsettling. There are things a man can say that don't just indicate a red flag, they are the red flag. But how do you know which ones? How do you separate a bad day from a fundamental fracture in character? How do you know when a phrase isn't a slip of the tongue, but a glimpse into someone's psychological playbook? That's where we begin. Because if you don't learn to recognize these phrases for what they are, not just words, but weapons, you'll spend years justifying the very person who's dismantling your spirit. You'll think you're fixing a relationship when really, you're dissolving yourself. So this is your call to awareness. To radical self-trust. To stop translating pain into patience. Because if a man says any of these 5 things, even once, and you feel your chest tighten, your eyes shift, your instincts whisper, that is not overreaction. That is your subconscious screaming. Listen. Because what comes next can cost you years. Now, let's look beneath the surface. Not at the words themselves, but the world that gave birth to them. There's a chilling truth hidden beneath everyday conversation. Some people don't speak to connect. They speak to control. And yet, we're conditioned to give language the benefit of the doubt. To believe that words are just air and sound, fleeting and harmless. But that's a dangerous illusion. Because behind certain phrases lies an entire architecture of intent, a psychological strategy designed to disorient, diminish, and dominate. Think of it like this. A skilled manipulator doesn't need to raise a fist. He only needs to plant doubt. He doesn't need to imprison you with chains. He only needs to twist your sense of reality. He doesn't need to scream to be heard. He whispers, because silence is the most obedient weapon. These words, these little things he says, carry philosophical weight. They are not neutral. They reveal a worldview. A belief system. Let's deconstruct this. Phrase 1, you're too sensitive. On the surface, this sounds like feedback. In truth, it's gaslighting wrapped in concern. The man who says this isn't reflecting your emotional reaction, he's invalidating it. He's rewiring your inner compass. He's not just disagreeing with your feelings. He's teaching you to distrust them. This tactic comes from a fundamental philosophical problem, the denial of subjective reality. He wants to define what's real and reasonable for you, by imposing his perception over yours. This is not disagreement. This is erasure. And once he succeeds, you'll start editing yourself. Dismissing your instincts. Apologizing for your pain. Not because you believe him, but because you stopped believing yourself. Phrase 2, you're lucky someone like me is interested in you. This isn't confidence. It's conditioning. It's the slow implantation of scarcity thinking, the idea that love is limited, that you're unworthy, and that your options are few. But more than that, it's a projection of narcissistic philosophy. I am the prize. You are the burden. This belief runs deep in certain men. It's rooted in a transactional view of relationships, one where power is preserved through comparison, not connection. By making you feel replaceable, he makes himself feel irreplaceable. By shrinking your sense of self-worth, he inflates his control. This isn't flirtation. This is economic warfare, emotional colonization. And the currency is your confidence. Phrase 3, you can't take a joke. Here, the weapon is subtle. It's laughter. But not the kind that connects. The kind that cloaks cruelty in humor. The joke isn't the point. The point is your discomfort. He studies your reaction, not to understand, but to test your limits. This isn't playful. It's a trial balloon. A calibration of how much disrespect he can normalize. And if you object, you're too sensitive. There it is again. This tactic traces back to a disturbing psychological pattern, disarming accountability. By disguising insults as humor, he absolves himself of responsibility while still delivering the damage. It's a form of plausible deniability. I didn't mean it that way. You're overreacting. Everyone else laughed. He becomes the victim. You become the killjoy. And just like that, the roles reverse. The deeper pattern. Each of these phrases is a microaggression against your reality. Individually, they seem minor. Collectively, they form a web, one that slowly entangles your identity, your confidence, your clarity. This is what psychologists call cognitive erosion. The slow, almost invisible wearing away of your ability to trust your own thoughts and emotions. The result? You begin to rationalize red flags. You become your own gaslighter. You stay, long after the first wound. The philosophical root. Why do some men do this? Because for them, dominance feels safer than intimacy. Because vulnerability requires equality, and they can't tolerate that. They were taught, directly or indirectly, that being in control is synonymous with being valuable. That to be loved, they must be admired. That to be admired, they must appear superior. This worldview is ancient. It's rooted in fear. Fear of irrelevance. Fear of being truly seen. And so they speak in codes, in insults, in manipulations. Not to connect, but to survive their own insecurity. And why do we miss it? Because society teaches us to prioritize harmony over truth. Because we're trained to see the best in people, even as they bring out the worst in us. Because we've been told that walking away makes us quitters. That second chances are noble. That maybe we misunderstood. But the truth is, when a man speaks with the intent to confuse, control, or condition, he is not building a relationship. He is building a cage. And the longer you stay, the more ornate it becomes. Padded with false memories. Decorated with justifications. Locked with the very words that first made you question your right to leave. You must understand. Words are never just words. They are maps. They point to belief systems. They expose wounds. They reveal intentions. And if you learn to read them, really read them, you'll stop walking blindly into battles you were never meant to fight. You'll stop fixing what was designed to break you. You'll stop bleeding from wounds labeled misunderstandings. Because the most dangerous phrases a man says are the ones that convince you he didn't mean them. Next, we decode the phrases themselves, one by one, how they show up, how they trap you, and how to break free. Now that we've peeled back the psychological and philosophical layers, it's time to name the poison directly. Let's dissect the 5 phrases that often sound like throwaway lines, but are, in truth, red flags disguised as conversation. Because when you understand what these phrases really mean, you stop being confused by their charm. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop translating your trauma into loyalty. 1. You're too sensitive. This isn't feedback. It's emotional censorship. When a man tells you this, what he's really saying is, your pain is inconvenient to me. It's an act of erasure. He doesn't want to deal with the impact of his behavior, so he invalidates the response to it. This phrase is designed to make you second-guess your emotional radar, to dull your instincts so he can stay in control. He isn't trying to understand you. He's trying to reprogram you. Translation: I don't want to be held accountable, so I'll convince you your emotions are the problem. 2. You're lucky to have someone like me. This is not confidence. It's conditioning through scarcity. It may come cloaked in charm or joking arrogance, but make no mistake, this is psychological warfare. It subtly implies, you're replaceable. I'm not. It's the kind of phrase that isolates you, slowly convincing you that no one else will love you, that you're not good enough, and that staying is survival. This isn't just about ego. It's about power dynamics. He positions himself as the prize, and you as the problem. Translation: I want you to feel dependent, so I'll inflate my value and deflate yours. 3. You can't take a joke. This is a deflection tactic. A mask. It's how manipulators protect their cruelty with humor. The joke isn't designed to make you laugh, it's a probe. A social experiment. When you react, they study you. If you laugh along, they escalate. If you speak up, they gaslight you. It's a lose-lose trap. Because now you're not only hurt, but also made to feel like you're the problem for not having fun. Translation: I'm going to hurt you, and if you object, I'll make it your fault. 4. You're imagining things. This is textbook gaslighting. It attacks your perception of reality and slowly replaces it with his version of truth. This phrase doesn't just challenge a memory or misunderstanding. It reconstructs reality. It tells you that your intuition can't be trusted. That your eyes lie. That your emotions are fabricated. It makes you hesitate before speaking. It makes you question your grip on truth. Translation: The only reality allowed here is mine. And once that seed is planted, self-doubt grows like a weed. 5. No one else would put up with you. This one cuts the deepest. It's not even disguised. It's a psychological knife, sharp and deliberate. It's the ultimate isolation spell. He's not just attacking your behavior. He's attacking your right to be loved. This phrase seeks to cage you not with love, but with fear of abandonment. It tells you that your pain makes you unlovable. That your trauma makes you unworthy. That your voice makes you too much. And that he, in his noble patience, is your only shot at being accepted. Translation: I want you to feel like a burden, so you'll never leave. The pattern behind the phrases. What links all these phrases isn't tone, or volume, or vocabulary. It's intent. Each one is a brick in a psychological prison. Each one erodes your sense of truth, safety, or self-worth. And that's the point. Because the goal of the manipulator is not to make you angry. It's to make you unsure. To freeze you between confusion and guilt. To train you to doubt your instincts, so you stay longer, give more, and demand less. The damage they cause. Here's what happens when you stay exposed to these phrases. You apologize when you've done nothing wrong. You defend the very person who's hurting you. You minimize your needs to avoid making things worse. You shrink your voice, your desires, your boundaries. You start believing that love must feel like survival. And eventually, you forget who you were before their words began editing your soul. But here's the truth they don't want you to realize. You are not too sensitive. You are emotionally intelligent. You are not lucky to have him. He is lucky to be in your presence. You are not imagining things. You are waking up. You are not hard to love. You're just used to being tolerated instead of cherished. You are not alone. You are remembering your worth. The most powerful act of self-love is believing yourself again. Trusting what your body knows before your mind can explain. Walking away the first time your soul flinches. Because when a man speaks like this, he is telling you exactly who he is. Believe him. It doesn't happen all at once. The decision to leave isn't always a lightning bolt, it's often a quiet moment. A pause in the middle of another manipulation. A second where the words don't land the way they used to. Where instead of defending him, you feel yourself defending you. And in that moment, a small voice returns. The one you buried beneath his approval. The one that whispered warnings while you begged for clarity. The one that knew the truth, long before you were ready to say it out loud. That voice doesn't scream. It doesn't demand. It doesn't fight. It simply knows. And once you hear it again, really hear it, you can't go back. The exit wound. Leaving someone who's controlled you with words is unlike any other break. Because the pain isn't just emotional, it's existential. You're not just grieving the relationship. You're grieving the version of yourself who tolerated it. You're mourning the time you spent mistrusting your instincts, rationalizing your suffering, shrinking to fit someone else's comfort zone. That's why walking away doesn't feel like freedom at first. It feels like withdrawal. You've been conditioned to equate love with approval. To equate peace with silence. To equate pain with loyalty. But that wasn't love. That was dependency wrapped in illusion. And now, the illusion is shattering. The fog lifts. After you leave, the world doesn't suddenly become easier. But it becomes real. You'll find yourself revisiting conversations, replaying his phrases, trying to decode the moments you once dismissed. That's normal. That's not weakness. That's your brain reorienting itself to truth. But here's the danger: nostalgia will whisper to you. It will soften the memory. It will downplay the damage. It will dress your abuser in old laughter and faded photos. It will ask, Was it really that bad? Maybe you overreacted. What if no one else understands you like he did? And that's when you must remember. You didn't leave because of one phrase. You left because of a pattern. A philosophy. A slow erosion of your soul. Reclaiming your voice. Healing begins when you stop editing your truth. When you say, that was manipulation, even if no one believes you. When you stop defending his good side and start validating your pain. When you realize that your softness was not the problem, his inability to meet it was. You don't have to become hard to heal. You don't have to become bitter to protect yourself. You just have to become loyal to your voice again. That means speaking up when something feels wrong. Walking away the moment a pattern repeats. Trusting discomfort as a warning, not a flaw. Refusing to translate your worth into someone else's opinion. And yes, that means being alone for a while. But hear this. Loneliness is not the enemy. Betrayal disguised as love is. What real love sounds like. When it comes, it won't confuse you. It won't insult you and call it honesty. It won't challenge your worth as a method of bonding. Real love is clear. Even in conflict. Even in chaos. It won't feel like a test. It won't make you decode silence. It won't turn your boundaries into battlegrounds. It will sound like, tell me more. That makes sense. I see how that hurt you. Let's figure this out together. You don't have to shrink here. And most importantly, it will never ask you to betray yourself for the sake of peace. The aftermath, your power returns quietly. There will come a day, not dramatic, not cinematic, when you're having coffee, or folding laundry, or laughing with a friend. And you'll feel it. That quiet click inside your chest. The sound of your soul locking back into place. The sensation of not doubting yourself before speaking. The strange joy of being fully you, without apology. That's when you'll know. You made it. You didn't just leave him. You came back to yourself. And that voice? It will stay with you this time. Not as a warning, but as a guide. Not as a whisper, but as a roar. Not as a reaction, but as a compass. And it will remind you. You were never too sensitive. You were sensing everything. You were never hard to love. You were just asking for real love. You were never broken. You were becoming. So if a man says any of those phrases again, you won't analyze. You won't negotiate. You won't rationalize. You'll walk. Not out of anger. Not to prove a point. But because you now understand something sacred. Your peace is not up for debate. Your worth is not on trial. And your voice, finally, belongs to you. Look back, gently. Not with blame. Not with rage. But with the quiet power of a woman who finally sees it all clearly. The phrases. The tone shifts. The way you used to hold your breath when he entered the room. The way you practiced your sentences before speaking. The way you told your friends, it's complicated, when what you really meant was, I'm afraid. You survived all of that. But more than that. You recognized it. That's what separates you from the version of yourself who stayed too long. You listened to the voice. You heard what wasn't being said. And you choose truth over comfort. That is no small thing. That is revolutionary. Because in a world that teaches women to endure, to explain, to be understanding even while being undone, you chose to walk away from anything that required your silence as a form of survival. That is what healing really is. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of clarity. You were never the problem. Let's say that again. You were never the problem. The problem was the person who made you feel like loving you required patience, like hearing you was a chore, like respecting you was a favor. The problem was never your emotions, it was the man who found your depth inconvenient. The problem was never your sensitivity, it was the way he used your empathy as a leash. So release the guilt. Release the shame. Release the urge to explain yourself to people who benefited from your silence. There's nothing weak about walking away. If you cried when you left, good. That means you loved deeply. If you doubted yourself afterwards, good. That means you had a heart, not a script. If you stumbled before rising, good. That means you were carrying years of emotional debris on your back. But if you stayed too long, forgave too much, shrank too small, apologized too often, that doesn't mean you were weak. It means you were conditioned. And you woke up. And waking up is not a weakness. It's the beginning of sovereignty. The next time, you will spot it sooner. The subtle jabs. The polished charm. The way he blames his exes, or talks over your thoughts, or makes you feel like your boundaries are an inconvenience. You won't second guess it this time. You won't need a second opinion. You won't need closure from the person who broke you. Because now, your body will tell you. Your soul will flinch. And you will listen. Not out of fear, but out of wisdom. What healing really looks like. It's not always journaling or yoga or lighting candles. Sometimes, healing looks like saying no without explaining. Deleting the message before you send it. Blocking his number without guilt. Laughing again, and meaning it. Answering, "What do you want for dinner?" without freezing in indecision. Believing someone when they tell you, "That should never have happened to you." Looking in the mirror and saying, "I know her. I trust her." Healing isn't always beautiful. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's loud. Sometimes it's lonely. But it's always worth it. Because it brings you home. The woman who emerges. She is not bitter. She is discerning. She is not guarded. She is awake. She does not need to prove anything. Her peace is her power. She doesn't chase red flags to turn them green. She doesn't interpret insults as challenges. She doesn't confuse drama with passion. Because she has walked through the fire, and didn't come back hollow. She came back whole. And now, she knows. If a man says any of those 5 things again, he's not a mystery to solve. He's a mirror showing what you no longer accept. Final words. You were not too much. You were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person to meet you at your depth. Now you understand. Love that requires self-abandonment isn't love. It's performance. It's survival. And you've graduated from survival. You've returned to truth. So next time you hear words that once wounded you, smile. Nod. Walk away. You don't need to explain your standards to someone who's threatened by them. You are no longer for their understanding. You are for your own protection. And that? That is the voice you were born with. Before they ever taught you to doubt it.